Sunday evening, I was fortunate to be flying in and found myself at the White House with so many Americans caught up in an extraordinary patriotic moment for this nation. The events that have unfolded since Sunday are a credit to the men and women who serve in our military, our intelligence community, and certainly the courage and the boldness of the President of the United States to pull off but by any stretch of the imagination was an extraordinary feat, and do it with such incredible success. To hear the chants of "Yes, we can" and USA, and I was there for more than an hour, and people were still flowing in to the White House gates. For several of us here who were here on September the 11th, one could only hearken back to that spontaneous moment when Democrats and Republicans, senators and members of the House met on the steps of the Capitol that evening and broke out spontaneously in the singing of "God Bless America." It was that kind of moment, except tenfold at the White House. Roosevelt said in a different time that these are the times when the nation needs to find the warm courage of national unity. And I believe that we have that kind of opportunity. Over the break, we went home and conducted more than 1,000 events across our districts where we were able to show our constituencies that there is a clear choice and distinction about the way that this nation can go, understanding that we all need to address the deficit, but having come from a Congress where there were clear and distinct lines drawn on how we would deal with that deficit. Our approach was to make sure that we kept the social compact with our people intact. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, obligations to students seeking Pell Grants, and understanding the importance and significance of their education. It became clear to us that Americans clearly are willing to see a shared sacrifice and understand how important it is to deal with the deficit, but above all else, they want to see something that is fair. And the contrast between continuing to supply oil companies with subsidies, continuing to reward companies who ship jobs overseas, and given even more tax breaks to the nation's wealthiest 1%, did not stack up well while trying to balance the deficit on the backs of the elderly and our kids seeking education. Our members went out and heard from the public on the budget, on gas prices that we need to address, and we need to focus on the strategic release of the SPRO and other issues that are vitally important to them at home. And here to talk about that are our members, starting first with Anna Eshoo from California.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. My district is the 14th district in California. It's home to Stanford University, to Lucile Packard Children's Hospital, and to Silicon Valley. I held a telephone town hall meeting going into the Easter Passover break, and it is by far, the largest in terms of participation. 16,000, not 6,000, 16,000 people called in, and it was a telephone town hall meeting to share the facts relative to the budget proposal of the Republicans regarding Medicare and Medicaid. After putting the facts on, of course, we listened and took many questions from seniors. If there was a consistency in terms of a message was, A, don't do this to Medicare. don't dismantle it, and they told stories about what would happen to them if, in fact, there was not a guarantee. They were equally as upset and deeply concerned about Medicaid. Because Medicaid, of course, provides nursing home care for older Americans. And again, the stories. What would I do if I had to face Medicaid being block granted and the dollars being blocked and being used for those purposes? They're really, these are the stories. I mean, these are the stories of everyday Americans and the impact that these proposals would have on them. And of course, with Medicaid, if this were to pass, that would go into effect immediately. I also participated at Lucille Packard Children's Hospital in a rally, the same rally that was being held across the country by children's hospitals. This was all of the residents, and they presented one of their doctor's coats to me with their signatures all over it. And the rally was Stand for the Kids. And it's all around the funding for graduate medical education. We will make a huge mistake if, in fact, we don't fund that. So it's always good to be home. But I have to say that my constituents are not only in the loop with what's going on. I mean, I think I have more PhDs in my district than any other place in the country. So the facts matter to them. They posed very smart questions about why in our country, this great country, that we would single out, that the Congress would single out those that are really vulnerable on fixed incomes, and that the guarantee in Medicare would be stripped away. Constituents like to identify themselves as to whether they're Republicans, Independents, or Democrats. It matters not to me because I represent all of them. But across the board, as they identified what their party registration is, one woman said to me, "I'm a Republican, and I am so dismayed. I am so dismayed that anyone in my party would propose anything like this." So I think that the message is very clear. The American people want us to get our fiscal house in order, but very interestingly, they understood that this debt and deficit was not created in January of 2009. And they said to me over and over again, develop a long-term plan that's going to address this, but don't take it out on us. We've paid our taxes, we've worked hard, we've raised our families. We didn't come to this stage of our life to have Medicare dismantled, and God knows what happened to the person that they love so much, in many situations, their spouses that actually are participating in Medicaid and those nursing home beds that they use. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jerry Conley from Virginia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and glad to be with my colleagues and with all of you. We had two big town hall meetings in my district during this time period. One, we hosted President Obama at the Northern Virginia Community College in Annandale in my district. Several thousand people attended, and I thought his message about the need for balance. We have to get our fiscal house in order, but not at any cost. We have to understand there's a difference between the Democratic message and the Republican message. The Republican message seems to be to understand the cost of everything, but the value of nothing. And the need to make strategic investments is something that's very important, certainly to my constituents in my district. And we heard that loud and clear at the town hall meeting with the President. Several days later, I had the largest telephone town hall meeting, my 11th, that I've ever had. 31,000 constituents in the 11th Congressional District of Virginia participated in this telephone town hall meeting. And we did a poll, and we asked them whether they supported efforts by Mr. Ryan, the budget chairman, on the Republican side, to dismantle Medicare as we know it, because we can't afford it, and to replace it with essentially a voucher system, starting with people who are 54 or younger, or whether we wanted to preserve Medicare as we know it. We made sure that the pro-Ryan question came first so that we didn't skew the results. We had very substantial participation in the poll question during the telephone town hall meeting, and by a margin of 73 to 27, my constituents flatly rejected the Ryan approach. They want to preserve Medicare as we know it. That's something worth fighting for in their minds. And I have to admit that was a somewhat surprising result in terms of the margin. I represent a swing district, a district that voted for George Bush in 2004, voted for President Barack Obama in 2008. And I had a close election myself in a very divided contest last November. So to have that kind of overwhelming result, to me, was a telling sign of the attitude of voters with respect to the Ryan budget. And certainly that's something I'm going to take into consideration as we move forward here in the Congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. Kathy Castor from Florida.
Good morning. I'm Kathy Castor from the state of Florida. I represent the Tampa Bay area, and we're very proud this week because Tampa is the home of U.S. Central Command and U.S. Special Operations Command, and my community is very patriotic and very proud of all of the brave men and women in uniform that have served a vital role in the global war on terror over the past few years. That patriotism extends to a fight for our values and investing in the United States of America. When I was home, and remember, Florida has the highest percentage of older Americans over 65 out of all the states in the country, I was not surprised that they're rejecting soundly the GOP budget that will abolish Medicare. I had meetings at senior centers, one-on-one meetings in community centers. I went out of my district to hear people's opinions. We were on community college campuses. We were there with, at the site of a great infrastructure investment under the Recovery Act. And time again, people would say, why are the big oil companies getting these large tax breaks when they're making the largest profits in the history of the world, and the GOP is proposing an end to Medicare as we know it? Folks in Florida understand the promise that is Medicare. It has been that safety net, that lifeline for families for over a generation, 2 generations now. It has kept our older neighbors, our parents and grandparents out of poverty. And there is no reason, as we fight to balance the budget and reduce the debt, that we need to go down this very radical path of abolishing Medicare as we know it. These are 2 very distinct visions of America. One that is very cynical, proposed by the Republicans, that says let's end Medicare, let's continue to give tax breaks to millionaires, let's continue to give tax breaks to companies that push jobs overseas. Let's reduce the tax rate for millionaires to 25%, while you're saying to working class Americans all across the country that Medicare will come to an end, that it is going to cost you more over time. Their plan, remember, doesn't save any money. It simply shifts the cost to older Americans and their families. Don't take it from us, take it from the nonpartisan CBO that has said that older Americans will bear that cost in future years. And you know what's surprising? It doesn't matter what age you are. I saw a lot of the Republican town meetings where they said, oh, don't worry if you're 65 now or if you're 60, because it's just going to affect people over 55. Well, they reject that too. The older Americans, they want Medicare, that promise that you will live your life in dignity after you retire. They want that for their kids and their grandkids as well. Plus, I reject the notion that it's not going to affect people over 65. Because what will happen, and I've heard this from doctors and other providers, if the GOP sets us on a course to end Medicare as we know it, what incentive do providers have, doctors, hospitals, other practices? What incentive do they have to maintain their participation in Medicare? Add on the cuts, the dramatic, draconian cuts to Medicaid. And Medicaid, what does that really mean? That means nursing home care for older Americans. And that's not something that's delayed or put off in time. That's something that you watch as the Republicans get into the appropriations process. They're going to take a hatchet to. This is the course and the vision that they've set forth, a very cynical one that that ends that promise of Medicare that no matter who you are, what you've done all your life, that you can live your retirement years in dignity. And they have a fight on their hands.
Thank you, Kathy. To wrap it up, you're going to hear from our distinguished Mr. Andrews from New Jersey.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. This is a week where Americans are celebrating the fact that when we put our best and brightest to a task and believe in them, we can do anything. And the national unity that flows from that great revelation has given us a chance to create a national consensus to fix our country's fiscal problems. We're urging our Republican colleagues to listen to their constituents, to listen to the people of this country, and instead of being outside the mainstream of that consensus, join us in the mainstream. Join this consensus. I heard three things at home, which I am hearing from my friends from Connecticut and Florida and California and Virginia. The first thing is, yes, we want to stop borrowing 40 cents out of every dollar that we spend. We understand that that is bad for our country. It is irresponsible to our children and our grandchildren. We want to stop it. And we know that needs to be done. The second thing that I heard is we believe in Medicare. We believe in Medicare. We think that when you turn 65 years of age or you suffer a disability, you should know with certainty that you have a guaranteed right to get the best doctor care, the best hospital care, and have the government pick up the lion's share of the tab because we earned it and we paid for it. Can Medicare be improved? Yes. Should it be abolished? Absolutely no. And we urge the Republicans to join the mainstream, join the consensus and understand that point. Then the final point of consensus that I heard is this. If there is going to be sacrifice, if there are going to be difficult decisions on college campuses and in public school systems and in city halls around the country, and indeed among kitchen tables around the country, if we're going to get to this goal of balancing our budget and putting our fiscal affairs back in order by asking people to sacrifice some, then excluding the very wealthiest from that sacrifice makes no sense whatsoever. If there's going to truly be a national effort to get this problem under control, then excluding those that have had the best in the best of times from doing just a little bit in the worst of times doesn't really make any sense at all. The president said it very well. The Republican plan says this: let's make 32 retirees pay a lot more out of their pocket for health care. $6,000 a year out of their pocket for health care. And then let's take the money and not put it toward deficit reduction. It would be bad enough, frankly, if we just took the money from, but what makes it worse is then let's take that $6,000 and give a tax break to a person making $1 million a year. There is a consensus on this issue. There's a consensus that's a really bad idea. So we're asking the Republicans to join the consensus mainstream of the American people that say, yes, let's fix the budget, but let's protect Medicare, and let's ask the wealthiest and most successful to do their fair share in solving this national problem. That's the national consensus I hope we can achieve in the weeks ahead.